Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 6th episode of Deconstructing. This month, community manager Megan Everett sits down with environment artists Brian Yu and Lionel Cruget as they chat about what it takes to design environments for a game like Warframe. Sit back and enjoy.
Welcome back to the Deconstructing podcast. My name is Megan Everett, and today I have with me...
Brian Yu. I am an environment artist. I've been here for 4 years.
And Lionel, and I'm also an environment artist, and I've been here 2 years.
Ooh, very nice. All right, we're going to jump right into these questions because you can't see, but these two are extremely prepared for this podcast, more prepared than even I am. One of the broader questions is, what exactly is an environment artist? Because I know you hear the word environment artist, and you probably automatically assume literally environment, like trees, foliage, or like an environment. So what exactly is an environment artist?
Well, it depends on the studio, right? So like, I used to work at DICE, and they have a term called world builder. So they do other things. They can do layout, they can do prop dressing. At DE, it's a little different. So we basically do almost anything except characters and weapons. We don't do large creatures either, but we do, rocks, asteroids, spaceship interiors, monuments.
Spaceship itself sometimes, depending on the person.
Yeah, we could do like a lot of different
We've even
things.
done creatures.
Pretty varied, right?
I've done 2 fish. He's done a couple of fish, I think, as well.
So it's pretty broad.
Yeah, it's
Pretty
huge, wide gamut of a lot of stuff.
And how did you both get your start in environment art?
I didn't go to school for it initially. Initially, I went to school. I didn't know what I wanted to do in university. When I was choosing my university, it was more of I liked Photoshop at the time. So I went to the university fair and was like, hey, are there any programs that have Photoshop in it? And like, hey, this one at Ryerson. I'm like, okay, cool. I'll go to something called New Media. And it was new and nothing to do with the news. So I went through that. Yeah, it was a lot of everything actually, which kind of prepared me for this. It was like robotics, some programming, websites, motion graphics, and I chose 3D for one of the courses. And so I got my first taste there. And I don't know, I just loved it immediately. I ended up graduating with my Bachelor of Fine Arts and then worked graphic design for a little bit. Got let go at my graphic design job.
Scandal.
Yeah, it wasn't
No,
the
don't
best.
say it, don't tell me.
It wasn't the best, but yeah. And then from there, applied to Seneca for game art and animation, got in 8 grueling months, and then got into working in the industry, but mostly from a professor or freelancing. And then, to cut the story short, ended up here.
And here we are.
Yeah.
Lionel, how about you?
Long story short, you can actually record it will be easier. Long story short, I basically started as a character artist for many years, for about close to 10 years. And then scanning happened, and it was not very challenging creatively, so I decided to go into environment art. And a recruiter told me, oh, I have a job for you in Canada. And I applied, and that's how I got here.
Oh.
You've been all over the place then.
Yeah. I've been in Sweden and Spain and Czech
Crazy.
Republic. Yeah.
All right, back to Warframe. Now that we know your past, what were the first environments that you worked on for Warframe as a project?
Basically, when I got into the studio, I got a pretty challenging task. They basically told me, oh, you need to create some orkin fishes. I'm like, what is that?
Oh, that was your first task?
That was my first task.
Wow.
And I had to do the design and make the model. And they had to reuse the animations from the fishes from the planes, right? So it was going to have a swimming animation, like a wiggly tail or something, right? But Steve was like, I don't want them to look like fishes. I want them to look like creatures that process coolant. I'm like, wow.
So we're talking Vallis fish, right?
Yeah,
Fortuna?
like from
okay.
Venus, yeah.
Yeah.
And also there was this tier system where basically if you catch a rare fish, it's going to be having more ornaments. So basically I had to come up with a system where, let's say on this fish called the cynatid, for the people listening, they might know which one it is, it's rare. The crest is actually growing. So if you have a rare one, the crest is actually very like long It's almost like a circle, right? So that was tricky to make. So that's what I worked on first when I got here.
That's it. That's pretty crazy to be thrown into Warframe and be like, we're doing a new open world. Here you go. You know,
You design some fish that don't look like fish.
yeah. Design some robotic fish that aren't real and don't move the same as real fish. And
Yeah.
Right. Brian?
Yeah, for me, it's nothing that glamorous for my first time. It was for the War Within set, or the quest anyway.
Yeah.
I worked on the Grenier Asteroid set where there was like this giant door, and you had to, during the gameplay, you had to stand there while the door is slowly opening or something.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, and so I worked on that, and I also worked on the stone door. I'm not going to have any spoilers, but it's in that quest in the mountains, stone door. I worked on that, and those are like my first two actual, hey, these are your own props, start from scratch kind of thing.
Yeah. Were there any challenges when you were thrown into that you
Oh
remember?
yeah, because I had to design the stone in a certain way because it had to have structure but also look like stone.
Right.
And so the concept, you're only given so much, and you have to translate that into 3D and make it work with the environment and whatnot. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of experience with ZBrush, which is a program we use for sculpting and modeling. So that was probably the most difficult one, I would say. Yeah.
So you guys get to work on obviously a lot of things, fish, doors, many things.
Yeah, I worked on a lot of doors at the beginning.
Yeah, just door guy.
Like, yeah, one door, I was the door guy at the beginning. It was one door, and I worked on like 2 Corpus doors, the Grenier Asteroid ship door, stone door, and then probably like 1 or 2 more
Yeah.
at the beginning.
Did you do friendship doors?
No, I wish. I almost made, I mean, we could have made one in Cetus, but we scrapped that.
A friendship door?
I don't know, it could have been a friendship door. It was supposed to be a door underneath the market that was a secret to other stuff.
Instead we did the cave thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. No spoilers, kind of. Find the cave. Oh, whatever. So what have you worked on that you are most proud of that you can remember on Warframe?
Well, it's for me like the
Your
Railjack
Roken
is...
fish.
Oh, that fish!
Okay,
The
well,
Railjack too.
the
Yeah.
fish was...
I'm gonna look at this fish totally different now.
Yeah.
Okay, the fish was like, it was a cool challenge, especially because Steve was like, okay, make me something that does not look like a fish. Every time I was like sending him like a sketch, it was like too much like a fish. I'm like,
Didn't you print it? Oh, was that another one?
oh, that's the other one.
okay.
Yeah, so basically I'm working on a fish that I'm actually printing. Like it's going to be a physical
3D
thing.
printed.
Oh,
Right.
cool. Is it like a Warframe fish?
Yeah, but it's not in the game. It's one that I made in my spare time, but
I
it's
see.
not. We couldn't actually squeeze it in because there's too many fishes in, you know.
There's never
many
enough
fish.
fish.
What?
Never enough fish.
No. Who knows? Maybe we'll put it in at some point.
It'll be
Yeah,
for
maybe.
Fish Team 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
More fish team.
But yeah, like the Railjack interior, because it was when we started like having conversations about what it was gonna be and the style. The first question was like, how are we gonna pull this off? So it's like organic stuff. Nobody has made it before in the game industry. How are we gonna produce it?
Well, there's a reason why people don't make it. 'cause
Exactly,
it's
there's a
hard.
reason because
It's extremely time
it's
consuming.
because it's really hard, and it's really hard because it's essentially automotive design. So you have a lot of like curves and flow and creases to catch like highlights, and you work on like parts of the ship and then you put some other stuff and you realize, oh, it doesn't fit. So you have to do a lot of back and forth, a lot of iterations. Yeah, I would say like the bar was really high, and I'm happy with what we delivered. I think it's different. I think it's something that people haven't seen, like a spaceship like that. I think it's offering like a new kind of player experience, and seeing like the reaction of people like at TennoCon was really cool. So yeah, definitely that one for me. What about you, Brian?
The same, honestly. It'd be Railjack, because I spent a lot of time on that. I think I was working on that for like a year to 2 years on Railjack, and also the Cetus fish. But for the Railjack, I think specifically in that space, it's probably the airlock room. I would say was my favorite and what I'm most proud of, because we spent so much time designing it, and it was the
Are you talking like the dry dock, like what you show in the dojo? that
No,
what you
the
mean?
airlock room in the actual Railjack.
Which room is that?
Like
Like, think back to the demo. Like,
So you have a room in the back of the ship where
Yeah.
it has changed a bit now.
is that where the cannon was? Where you shoot at?
no, that's the top. So it's like on the main floor. You go all the way back. They showed it briefly. They didn't spend a lot of time back there.
Oh, is that
can-
where
you
the
can-
resource things were coming in? The boxes?
No, that's,
that's
the cargo.
the cargo.
God damn, this thing is huge.
It's pretty big. It's on the main level though.
That turned out
room-
really, really cool. Like it was very tight. Like I wish we had that quality everywhere in
Yeah.
the ship. Like it's hard to sustain, I think.
Well, with this new
But-
deferred rendering, you might be able to do more.
It's more like from a production perspective. Like
Ah.
it's very time consuming. Like you can see there's a lot of tricky curves and details and whatnot.
Because that area is
So-
contained, but then if you put it everywhere, it'd be too much,
It'll be
too
too much,
noisy,
yeah.
or too many curves. And at that time, it's like it's way too curvy. So
Way too curvy.
yeah, at
Oh,
times
we had that problem too.
we had to introduce more structural and more strict and rigid elements to kind of balance it.
Yeah. It's like the mind of an artist right there. Too curvy, need more ridges. Like I would have never, maybe not never noticed it, but like never thought of that. But
Yeah.
you guys obviously have to because you're artists.
Actually, Steve brought it up too. Like there was, because we in the channel we share everything with Steve and he has opinions. So sometimes Steve, like for example, he's the one who said, "Oh, I want a window in the cockpit on the sides." He's the one who said, "I really want to see the exterior more." So we tried to cut it in and design it right. So it was the same for some part of the ship where he was like, "Guys, I don't feel it. It's too curvy." And I'm like, "Yeah, you know what? Like it's hard to see what you're looking at to understand the space."
Yeah, especially
So-
that lower area with your
Yeah.
giant machine. Like I was like, oh, it's pretty cool. It doesn't make sense, but it's pretty cool. And then he reworked
That's
it.
Warframe.
Yeah.
It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it's
Doesn't
just
make
like a
any
bunch
sense.
of giant, like 3 giant holes that looks like, I don't know, you could do anything there. And then I was like, hey, or someone was like, hey, we need to redesign this. And we redesigned it more structured, it's more rigid. It's like, oh, okay, looks like a machine or some like Orokin, or not Orokin, but some Warframe type organ looking thing. So yeah, it works now.
Yeah, makes more sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, that one was tricky, my God.
Yeah. Well, speaking of tricky, what are some of the hardest challenges you've had as an environment artist? Could be TennoCon, could be Railjack, could be fish.
Me specifically, as a kind of broad stroke, not anything specific, but I can't get into specifics.
I'm sure you can.
It's more on the design part because my design skills aren't strong, though I am getting better at it and I have a lot more opportunities. Like right now, I've been given a level in sentient stuff, so even though I'm not a level artist, it kind of freed up, and so took the opportunity, and I'm working and designing that level and speaking with the level designer and whatnot to make sure we get the gameplay across, and also working on the main prop that's in that space. But definitely design, whether it's designing the level or we have a rough sketch of something, or maybe even the concept is concrete and we put in the level and it just doesn't work. And we have to like, hey, we have to design something else for this or that. I'd say that as a general bubble would be the most difficult challenge for me. Yeah, and a lot of the players are people who don't know about the dev side of things and how things work. There's a lot of thought process and rework and revisions that go into it. You just go through so many iterations, and sometimes we love this, sometimes we don't. Like for example, like the Acme holes that people are dropping out of now. Initially, we didn't really have those. It was just you go to the airlocks, which is in the operator area,
Which
and
we
that's
never
how you
used.
got out. Yeah, and that's how you got out. Which is like, okay, if we're in a firefight, we have to go from either the side turrets or the cockpit, and we have to run all the way back.
Right.
So we started putting those everywhere to make it more convenient. So it's a lot of times it's like either you balance between realism or what you want as an artist and designer, and if it's fun and gameplay. So it's on
Yeah.
that spectrum a lot.
And actually, those helped a lot from a demo point of view because you could see 2 different parts or 3 different parts of the ship, and we're both like exiting out of the ship, right? So you see
Yeah.
more. And also, at one point, it was broken where if we all used the same one, it would crash. So thanks.
I think I remember that in,
Yeah.
in one of the, you guys were talking about it in one of the dev streams. I
Well,
think.
good thing we have 4 other exits to use.
Yeah, there's 6 actually. Can you
Really?
go through the cargo? I can't remember.
Yeah, you can now.
Okay,
Yeah.
but you guys
So-
haven't really shown the cargo. You've briefly shown it.
Briefly
Yeah, at the very
once.
beginning, it was like a really quick tour of
Yeah.
what we could. Because actually, other than showing off the Railjack and that beginning when Reb loads into it,
Yeah.
most of the time walking through that was so Danielle and I could load into it and not crash. So
Yeah.
that's why she was doing a tour. Also because it's really cool to look at and
Yeah.
we're showing something new. But yeah.
Yeah, initially we had 2 exits, and now we have 6, if you don't include the cargo bay. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's just,
Arquin canning being the best one.
yeah, that
good
was
job.
definitely the funnest.
Yeah,
Seeing it
oh,
in
yeah.
action, I was like, oh, sick. And he pierced through the hole, and then with the electricity, whoever did the effects,
That came out of nowhere.
I wasn't expecting the effects to be like that.
Yeah.
When they punched through the hull, I was like, oh, whoever did the effects, genius.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the way they did it's kind of like
It was great.
Yeah.
what you expect from like a superhero movie or something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's
We just
really
need
epic,
like the
right?
punchy sound effects to follow that now.
Yeah. When we were doing the demo, it was like that wasn't there, and then all of a sudden the next run, it was there. And we're
Yeah.
like, whoa! We're
Yeah.
like, oh my god, what did we do different? Like nothing. We just added this crazy lightning effect. So speaking of Railjack, do you have any more memories from TennoCon that you remember working on, or just like you said, the reaction from the crowd? Any kind of memories?
Well, so I mean, this year it was cool, but I have an anecdote from last year.
Oh,
Last year is the best one.
So basically, I was in the crowd, right? And
Last year.
there were like 2 kids in front of me. I think they were like 10, 12. And when we showed the demo with the spaceships, right? One of the kids in front of me, he jumped in the air out of excitement. I was like, wow, like if you can, trigger that kind of response, that's crazy, right?
yeah.
So like for me to see how gamers react to what we do, because we work like pretty much in a sheltered environment, like we work on our stuff, like we don't have any feedback from the world, like from gamers, right?
Yeah.
And then
And
suddenly they see it,
Yeah.
and then they have like a huge reaction. It's really cool to witness, I think.
And also a lot of the players, they usually react to not so much the environments, usually it's with bugs or weapons or characters, not so much environment art. A lot of the, not just Warframe particularly, but a lot of environment artists, if we're doing our jobs right, either they notice it like, oh, this is fantastic, or they don't say anything good, they just pick up on the bad stuff. It's kind of skewed and weird. If we do a good job, and no one notices any of the flaws or things that we might have missed or put in, then we did like a fantastic job.
Yeah. All right, back on track here. What sort of influences did you draw from when working on different environments? Like maybe some video games, movies, or other artists?
For the listeners here, maybe they know this, but like the Tenno style is highly influenced by sea creatures. Like calamaris and squids and stuff like that. If you look at Volt's head, you can see it, right?
Literally,
It's like
little squid head.
and basically we look at like fauna and flora, so you can look at animals and plants. For the Railjack interior, for example, we really looked at car design, automotive design, and we looked at car designs that were kind of organic looking. So now because of new manufacturing technologies, they can actually make cars that look much curvier, right? And so one of them is Infinity. They make really cool cars. They have some very cool concept cars that are very, curvy and flowy and some nice creases to catch some highlights. So we try to use that because we have this new tech with the deferred lighting system, right? We can have really cool reflections, more complex lighting. So it was a cool way to make the surfaces interesting, where you have like this nice curve, and then you have like a little modulation in the reflection, right? We look at like product design, so it could be like, I don't know, like a perfume bottle, it could be toys. There's a lot of people at work who love Gundams. There's like a
Brian.
I don't know. There's a channel, like, I don't know, there's like probably like 10, 15 people, and lots of people like Cass, for example, she's crazy about Gundams
she's
these days.
insane.
So yeah, like we look at different things, right? So we don't really look at games. Strangely enough, like we want to do our own thing, and I think that's why the game looks so different.
Yeah.
Because
So like a
it's
sci-fi
also
game
part of
specifically.
there's a culture at the office where we try to think out of the box. We want to go into the uncharted territories, right? We try to say like, is it different enough? Can we make it more interesting? Idea-wise,
Like, how do we push this to be
how do we
even
push
more
this, right?
weird?
like Matt, for example, or Steve, they really push every time.
Oh yeah.
It's
And
like
they're
no,
very
this is-
courageous and brave in that regard, because like if it fails, then it fails and we learn from it.
At least we
and-
tried.
Yeah, and then we rework it, and we get some fantastic stuff. Like the Dog Days event was freaking fun, even though like they're
so
afraid of
fun.
water, but we're still using water guns. And that's fantastic. That was ingenious. I was not expecting that. It was so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like, to touch on what Lionel said, we don't really look at a lot of games. The only time we did was we'd have our designs. I mean, most of the time, environment artists, we don't design our stuff from scratch. Most of the time, we get it from concept artists. Unless if it's like, hey, all the concept artists are bogged down and they're busy, and we need some cowl or whatever to fit over this here, then we'll design. But usually, we have a concept already, and going from there. Sometimes we're making it's like this kind of looks like something you'd find in another game. And so from there, we'd be like, okay, we need to change it or design it so it doesn't look like it's from something else. More so than, hey, let's look at this and see if we can pull any ideas or stuff from it. Warframe is so different from everything else that we can't really pull certain things.
Right.
Maybe the general sense of the idea we can, but usually not, especially like sentient stuff, for example.
It's just so weird.
Yeah, which is so weird and different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They put a lot of work into that because there were a lot of different take on that design, on that kind of visual language. And I remember, like, it was interesting, but maybe it was not iconic enough, and they pushed again because they're like, it's not singular enough. So they actually spent many, many months doing concept art explorations, right? And I think it's probably when Marco, I think he made a concept that everybody was like, okay, this is what we want.
Yeah.
It was like a kind of the tipping point.
Oh yeah, for the sentient stuff, this is another tangent, but I think from what I remember, we went through like 3 or 4 big iterations. Because initially we had one art, this is like maybe 3 years ago, we started to dabble at, hey, what would a sentient talisman look like? And it looked like innards and bowels and stuff like that, where you'd have like fleshy bridges going from place to place. And then that got kind of shelved because we're working on other stuff. And then at one point, it reminded me of like the movie Aliens with some of the detail, because it's very high repetition, very noisy and dark, and kind of like gross and shiny, and looks like it's sticky or
slimy.
Wet. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. It looks like it'd be nasty to be in there. It smelled gross, but it's pretty cool. And then when I got brought on the project, I'm like, oh, it's so different now.
Yeah.
It's the new direction, which I feel it's more unique than what's already out there.
Yeah. I'm excited for that. I've seen some.
It's a lot of work.
I know. Well, Jeff was saying on the one dev stream where we showed it off for the first time, the fact that it went from, I think that like that tile set originally was just going to be for the new war quest, and then it's like, no, we're going to make a whole new everything, new, enemies and all that. And it's kind of what happens here is you get one idea, you think it's cool, add it into something. No, this needs to be its own entire thing. Let's do something wild with it. All right, so I'm going to ask the last question of where people can find you if you want people to know your social medias.
So I have an art station you guys can check out. It's Atomic Boy. So Atomic, lowercase and no space. On our station, you can find me there. And my name is Lionel, Cruget, Cregut. You can probably find me anywhere.
I can't remember what my name is. I think it's just Brian Yu, spelled the correct way, Brian.
What do you mean, spelled the correct way?
Because some people spell it with a Y, and that's incorrect.
Oh, do they really?
Sorry?
Some people spell Brian with a Y?
Yeah.
Weirdos.
Wait, isn't Brian Adams with a Y?
Yes.
Is it?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Spelled it incorrectly.
So
it has to be with I.
You should send him an email.
Yeah.
Dude, your name is wrong.
Your name is wrong. Sorry about it.
So it'd just be Brian Yu on our station, and then I guess on like Twitter and stuff, it's Epion, but it's spelled 3PY0N.
Making it real difficult.
Yep. It was from like 2004, 2005.
3
okay.
Pion?
It's an Epion. It's based on the Gundam Epion.
Oh,
from
right.
Gundam Wing.
We've come full circle. Back to Gundam.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you to Brian and Lionel for joining me on Deconstructing.
Thank you so much for having us.
No problem. And we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.
A big thank you to Brian and Lionel for being on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of Deconstructing.